Right. Welcome back to the second ISA summer sessions of this summer. This is year 2 of summer sessions. Last year we did a deep dive into omnichannel. This year we are hitting industrial marketing, and we're hitting it hard. As Eddie would say, the gloves are coming off. So speaking of Eddie, let me reintroduce my co-host here. This is Eddie Saunders Jr. Eddie, say hello. Tell him where you're coming from.
What's up, everybody? I'm Eddie Saunders Jr. And if you haven't been on LinkedIn lately, I'm founder and CEO of Speak Friend, the industrial demand agency. So, hey, happy to come over here, take the gloves off, start swinging a little bit.
Nice. So the gloves are coming off, but we've titled this whole series, all 4 of these sessions, is Industrial Marketing is Broken. Now, for those of you who are in industrial marketing, and Eddie's one of those guys, it's really about admitting that we have some work to do. It's about admitting that we're behind B2C and we're behind some other verticals in B2B too. And so in order to meet our customers where they are, in order to get our industry where it needs to be, we need to face the facts that there are parts of industrial marketing that need attention. Last session, we took a look at CRM and attribution, did a deep dive with Mark Vanderhoff, and that was a good conversation. Go back and check that one out. I think the recording's on the landing page there. But today, we're talking about old school. There's a lot of old school marketing tactics that many of you are still using in your businesses. I'm happy to say that we're going to bring on an expert today that's not just going to tell you throw them all out. She's going to help us talk about how to modernize them, how to bring in some new tactics to work with those old tactics, but really just to help us catch up and look at things through that. So, Eddie, you brought on an expert today. You want to bring her on and introduce her?
You better believe it. Hey, this is an industrial marketing legit expert, seasoned veteran working for, the one and only Gorilla 76. I mean, I could go on and on about some of the work she's done. I've listened to her speak personally at the Industrial Marketing Summit last year and got the most notes from her specific segment there. Let's bring her on, and it's Aren Buresh.
My God, I've never gotten such a hyped up welcome before on a webinar. Thank you, Eddie.
You earned it. You're awesome. Thanks for joining us today. And you ready to get your sharp object out and let's update industrial marketing on what's what?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like Eddie said, I'm Aren Buresh. I'm a senior strategist at Gorilla 76 industrial marketing agency. But before that, I worked as an in-house marketer, like some of you might be, for a company that made packaging equipment. So I have kind of experience on both sides of the coin. My entire career has been in industrial marketing, and I just really love the people, the community here. Everyone is so hardworking, kind, dedicated, intelligent. These businesses are doing important work that's really fascinating. So I love this industry, and I'm really excited to talk about marketing specifically and kind of old school versus new school.
Nice. So, I love bios, love people when they tell us where they come from and what they've done. But specifically, I mean, you talk about why you like this industry and what's really drawn you to it. What about marketing? What are you really passionate about as it relates to marketing? Just it's a nice way to kick things off and get us to know who you are.
Yeah, I think like the best feeling in marketing is when you know your efforts are like driving revenue for the company. And especially in industrial, those wins can be pretty big. Like if you're selling large pieces of equipment, or even if you're selling something really small that has a huge, lifetime value for a customer, when you help bring in a new customer, I don't know, it's just really exciting and satisfying to know you're playing your small part in these companies that are doing really cool stuff. I'm not an engineer, but I love talking to them, and I get to do that in my job. So
Cool. All right. So Eddie and I worked to come up with some questions that we could pose to the 3 of us for discussion, but also ones we wanted to tap into you, Aren. So Eddie, what do you got up first? Where do you want to start this conversation?
We're diving right in. This episode is specifically about old school marketing tactics, what's relevant, and honestly, what's not relevant. So, what better place to start than Aren? Let's talk about some traditional marketing tactics that you personally believe are still effective today, despite the rise of all this digital activity.
yeah, for sure. I think one thing that is never going to go away, always will have value, is really intentional in-person interactions. Remembering the names of your customers' kids. thoughtful, personalized outreach, networking at trade shows and live events. I think the reason I say intentional example of something that would maybe be, I won't say old school, but like not as effective anymore is just kind of like, passively sitting at a booth or a table and waiting for the traffic that comes your way. I think it's about the authenticity in those interactions. So that is definitely still as effective as ever. People are craving that. And I would also say anything that is facilitating like OEM manufacturer and distributor collaboration. So Brendan, I know one thing that we've talked about as an example of this is like co-op dollars. That may be a more old school traditional tactic, but I think anything that is facilitating that connection is really good. So an example of, maybe a version of that that's a little bit more old school is, you pay out your co-op dollars, and that could be going to like billboards, print ads, whatever. And maybe you don't know what results you're getting back from that exactly. But there are good ways that you can modernize that. Like one thing we've talked about is digital marketing spend. Maybe you can put together a strategy and some goals for campaigns specific to your company in like Google Ads or LinkedIn even. Set a goal for how many leads you want in relation to what you're spending in those channels.
So in your experience, I think one of the things you said is a lot of times it's overlooked what those development funds can be used for. That it's not always specific that it has to be for print or it has to be something traditional. That these marketing spends in digital are also included in it. How do you find that kind of the specificity of the feedback that comes back? I would think that it would enhance the relationship between the channel partners because it's hard impressions, it's hard leads. But what have you heard about a success story with how this works? Does it really improve the relationship?
Yeah, I haven't had any clients, and I didn't work with those types of funds when I was an in-house marketer either. But I think if I were entering into a relationship like that, maybe from the perspective of like the manufacturer, I'd want to set clear goals from the outset and have kind of have that based in the reality of what you're spending. So like a good example is on Google Ads. If you want to dedicate like maybe a budget of $2,000 a month, say, for spend on that channel through your distributor, look at like how much does it cost to bid on the keywords that you're looking at. You can see that in like Keyword Planner in Google. And then go backwards, like, okay, how many clicks do I need a day to get results on this channel? Usually a good starting point is like 10, 20 daily clicks. And then you can set reasonable goals for like how many leads you want to expect. And then when you have these touch points and you're looking at results, you can kind of measure against like, it's not just a random shot in the dark, like, oh, we expect to see 50 leads a month from this channel with our spend. That may not be reasonable. So then you have something you can kind of measure yourselves against. And I think setting clear expectations at the outset is always going to lead to a stronger relationship in those situations.
Very cool. Eddie, anything to add to how you've seen these marketing co-op dollars help in some of these digital frameworks?
In all reality, I love the idea of co-ops. I mean, I've been selling and consulting with all different types of marketing for the last 14, almost 15 years. And some of the greatest experiences that I've been able to have that have achieved the greatest results is when we bring two parties together. Individuals have heard me talk about the buddy branding system many, many times, and it is a stem of the concept of these co-op dollars where you're combining efforts and resources, lessening and halving, if you will, the effort you're putting into some of these items, but then doubling what you can achieve, doubling the reach, frequency, and the results from it. So I couldn't be more of a bigger fan when it comes to collaboration and those co-op dollars because it's so hand in hand, never going out of style working with your friends.
Nice. Yeah. All right. I think that I know we're going to get into trade shows a little bit more and another summer sessions. We have a whole one dedicated to it. I do have some follow-up questions later for you on trade shows, but I'm going to let Eddie get this going into the next area.
Yeah, so we've already covered some traditional tactics, and Aren, per usual, just absolutely nailed it. Really, we couldn't agree more with your perspective, that human element, those in-person events. But conversely, now we're gonna get our sharp object out a little bit. So strap up, everybody. What are some old school tactics that you think have become, let's maybe say, obsolete and or ineffective given the shift in the landscape? Like, what's your real thoughts on this? This is a safe space. We can talk about it.
No, you're totally good. I think the broad answer here is anything you're doing simply because it's what you've always done might be holding you back. And some specific examples of that to put that into perspective. Like when you think of old school marketing tactics, one of the first things that comes to mind is print advertising in trade journals. Are those trade journals that your customers actually read? Do you know that? Have you talked to your customers recently and asked about that? Because if that's not a channel that they pay attention to, then yeah, that is an old school tactic that's not serving you anymore. If that is a, publication that is widely followed by your audience, how can you make that better? How can you double down on that? Are there ways that you could sponsor a webinar series, educational webinar series with that journal? Are there ways that you could publish like sponsored articles that are educational or case studies that give really good examples of how you solve problems for your customers? That's kind of one example of like, it could go either way. Like print advertising, yeah, it's more traditional. And it's only really obsolete if that's like not where your customers are spending time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like gone are the days where it's a strategy to just take an ad out and just place it. I think that there needs to be an element of hustle that goes in there. There has to be the afterwork. There has to be the measuring capabilities. Otherwise, you really have no idea how effective it is. And yes, they might have the distribution list that you're looking for and the reach into the audience, but there's Aren just gave some great examples of some ways that you can have an even greater reach by deepening the collaboration with that trade publication or outlet, or making your ad lead to something else so that you can actually measure the effectiveness of it. Just putting a picture of a product on a page or your company logo on a page, just you're missing an opportunity.
For sure, for sure. And then, kind of going back to your print, I have extensive experience in the digital as well as print realm, and I want to give credit where it's due. And I'll say print alone is not an effective strategy. Let's be honest with ourselves. I'm all about a good mix because to me as a marketer, distribution is distribution. Now, Aren brought up a really good point. Now, not all distribution is created equal, right? But that's why we create more of a mix. I'm all about a sniper rifle approach, but I don't think there's a lot wrong with that shotgun approach, specifically as as industrial marketers are challenging ourselves and experimenting. So don't be afraid of that. But print alone, for example, I've worked for a previous company that was the originator of the yellow pages. Our growth goal was anywhere between -13 and -15%. Can't make those numbers up. That was our growth goal. So not saying that print is dying by any means, but print alone itself cannot sustain a solid marketing strategy. You heard it here first, second, probably third. Anything else to add to that?
I would say it's probably one of the easiest, right? And so that's why a lot of people still do it. You can maintain a campaign pretty easily by just giving them the ad that you created last year, and say, here's the ad again, here's my check. I'll look and make sure that the ad was placed in your journal when it comes to me. But again, marketing has just gotten more nuanced. I don't want to say harder. I mean, there's some great tools that make things easier, and certainly new capabilities and new people who can do lots of stuff. But I think that it just takes some more strategy, more thought. Curious what you think though, Aren.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. Like there's a difference between like a tactic, which might like putting out a print ad is a tactic. That's something you do in service of like a greater marketing strategy. I think the way we have to think when we have so many channels and so many tactics at our disposal, Eddie was talking about having that good mix. You have print, you have digital, you have live events, you have personalized outreach. Like there's so many things at your disposal that it's kind of like a symphony. You need to be the conductor, and your strategy is not, just the trumpet, just Google Ads. It's kind of the combination of all those things.
Sure, for sure. And then as we kind of move things along, let's keep it. I don't want to give people emotional whiplash, but we're going to go some positive. We're going to poke some things. So let's kind of go back. Do you have any kind of experiences where a classic marketing tactic or a legacy tactic actually surprisingly yielded decent results?
Yeah. So one that really surprised me when I first started working on trade shows and I'm not going to talk extensively about trade shows, but was the impact of speaking engagements, like live speaking engagements. Because there's kind of, I saw a ripple effect to the success of it. So I'll give you an example. The important thing here is you need to be really specific, important, and timely in the topic that you're speaking about in any sort of PowerPoint live presentation. Because, we've all sat through one that is really dry and, we kind of wish we could go get a snack. But in this example, I used to work in packaging. So, big important problem in that industry is, like if you're packaging poultry, that's hard to do. It's slimy, it's irregularly shaped. It's hard to automate that process. And so a lot of times that means it's done manually by workers on a packaging line. And so, we've all experienced, well, maybe not experienced, but, heard about the challenges with like labor turnover and retaining talent in manufacturing. And when you rely on manual labor, that's hard. So if you can come out with a presentation that talks about how you can automate that process, that is a big pain point for people that are attending the show, attending your presentation, it's going to be well attended and it's going to have a big impact. And the ripple effect that I saw was like tons of people coming up to the speaker afterwards and continuing conversations. People coming to the booth the next day and asking about that presentation, people emailing after the show because it was memorable. It was addressing something that was important to that audience. And it was a good presentation. The speaker was well rehearsed, put the right amount of effort into it. So that was when I was kind of expecting like, oh, it's a presentation, like it'll be 30 minutes, but it was 30 minutes and then the start of so many conversations.
So do you find in that example, and I think it's a good one, that the presentation worked because it was less about the solution and more about the journey? I mean, I think a lot of times we've all sat through presentations that are basically demos. And that to me is old school marketing. Is I'm going to get up here, I'm going to show you a picture of the tool, I'm going to show you exactly what the thing does, and then here's the link to buy. What I feel like the good presentations I've seen are the ones that talk about the problem. They talk about in general some of the challenges we all face or anybody in a similar situation would face, and then a little bit of empathy around how to get through that. And really the product comes last. And that's sort of, if it comes at all, I think you establish that trust and you establish that I'm here to help framework way before you talk product, you talk sale. You finding that it's similar in that example?
Yeah, 100%. I think you almost have to approach it like, what are those people there for? Like they're there to learn and they're there to see what's new, right? Like that's what draws people to a presentation or a booth. Like it's new technology, it's new processes. And so it's less about like the Gripper 3000 that we're talking about. It's more about, well, this solution, this method of, automation that, is newer, and this is why it works. And these are some of the specifics, details, people are going to ask about. So yeah, it's definitely more about like putting yourselves in the shoes of who's in the audience. Like, what would you want? Would you want a sales pitch, or would you want something that is informative that you can take back to the company, after the show?
Yeah. Another tactic that I wanted to get your opinion on, I was talking to a few of our members this week, and they had said, prior to the pandemic, there was some tolerance for it, but after the pandemic, there's none. And this is the drop-bys at an office. And so marketing departments would be asked, hey, can you print up a PDF for me? I want to have it as a leave behind because I'm going to roll up with a box of donuts to a couple of offices today and see if they'll let me in. Basically, they're saying they're not letting me in. So what does that tell you about that tactic? I mean, not just that it's not working, but why?
Yeah, I think that's one thing. There's less tolerance for that now after the pandemic. Also, more people are working from home. It's very possible that the person you would need to talk to is working from their home office that day. And you can't plan that without communication in advance. I also think it can be a bit generational too. Like, Gen Z millennials are less receptive to like unexpected drop-bys. and less receptive to like those physical materials. I know I lose a lot of it. I end up recycling a lot of it because I don't, like the clutter. But yeah, and I think it's mostly because people more and more now want to be able to self-service and have access to that information earlier in the buying process before they talk to sales. So yeah, you could show up and probably give them a lot of good information and answer questions, but that might not be as welcome as like, for example, reaching out in an email and saying like, hey, I know you're trying to achieve this in your business. We help with this solution. I get a lot of questions about XYZ. And then just a video of you answering those questions and just sending it to them in an email. They can just reply, thanks, and store that for later, or they can set up a call with you if they want. But it kind of gives them the information without, this, I don't know, the drop by is there's expectations with it. It's like 30 minutes of your time to talk to someone that you weren't expecting.
Yeah. So Eddie, what do you think? I mean, are you seem like a guy who's always ready to go, but at the same time, mindset is everything. Like if you're not ready to be pitched, you might be focusing on something else entirely. What do you think? How do people sell you best?
Oh, it's so funny because what goes to my head, isn't it crazy? We used to pay like 99 cents for a ringtone, and now if our phone makes a noise, we freak out and want to throw it. And then I think we can all connect to that at some point. And I was also in my previous selling days, I was the guy bringing the donuts by, getting into the shops. It was a huge method for me, but it was awesome because I was able to see the shift. And we had choices as individuals. You could either sit and watch everybody, you could respond accordingly and adjust what you're doing. So an older school tactic that I think is kind of dying a little bit to an extent are some of those drop bys. And your feedback is very much in line with what I experienced in my career and the shift that was made. It had to happen. It had to happen. But crazy to think about how much we like getting paid for ringtones. But now we're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk to anybody. If you call me, it's like, what are you doing? This could have been a text. The times they are a changing.
Yeah,
so
and the only person that ever rings my doorbell is, Amazon. That's it. If anybody else rings my doorbell, I'm terrified, right?
you got it. You got it. So we're this is a great conversation. Let's keep some things rolling. And so Aaron, I need to know, we got these brands like people who are stuck and they're doing some legacy items, but they want to do some new things. They're dabbling around. How do you strike this balance of incorporating and keeping those classic tactics that are working while also embracing the newer, more innovative approaches that need to happen? How do you balance that?
Yeah, that is exactly what I encountered as an in-house marketer. I was doing digital marketing, but I was also planning like several trade shows a year. We were also still doing some print advertising, right? I think that's super common. What I found most effective was to try and apply modern reporting methods to those old school tactics. Because I think when we think about digital marketing, you have so much data at your fingertips. It's under a lot of scrutiny for that reason. Like you are holding those results to a different standard than like a print ad, for example, because you don't know exactly how many impressions you got from a print ad in a trade journal, but you do on a Facebook ad. And so I think just trying to hold those old school channels to similar results. And the results that I would recommend holding it to would be qualified leads and, generated pipeline and even down to revenue if you can track that far. And just, it's never going to be perfect. That attribution is never going to be perfect, especially if it's in a channel that's not digital. But one thing you can start doing today that I think helps a lot is start collecting self-reported attribution. So if you have forms on your website, add a form field for how did you hear about us? If somebody is calling you or emailing you directly, just ask in your first conversation, like, hey, how did you hear about us? And just start recording that data, because if you are running LinkedIn ads and you hear over and over again, yeah, we first heard about you on LinkedIn. Well, then that channel is effective. You're seeing the conversions go. But like if you are spending tons of money on like print advertising and you never hear people talking about your print ads, they're all like finding you online or through trade shows, like that might be a signal like, okay, maybe we need to reallocate some of that spend.
So resources is a great topic because nobody ever has enough of them, no matter whatever the size of your organization is. But specifically for a lot of our audience, which do run small marketing departments of either one or two or three, resources are not just the money to spend on these things, but also the time. Two questions. First one is how do you balance the time? I mean, to make a print ad takes time, to write an email takes time. Now to place ads and understand how to do digital advertising and paid ads, that's a whole nother thing. But your boss might be telling you, hey, we need to be doing this. So as a marketer, as somebody who's been told to do this, how do you convey back to your senior leadership, or for the senior leaders that are out there, how should they be thinking about the time it takes to explore these new things?
Yeah, absolutely. Time is not free, but I think especially when you are a team of one or two in-house marketer, it feels like it is, right? It's like, oh, it's just my time to go do XYZ. I don't need ad dollars for it. But your time is really valuable, especially when you have so many things on your plate. So like one piece of advice is track your time. Like I work in an agency now. I track my time because, you know, I have different clients. But when I was just like a salaried in-house marketer, I was like, why would I track my time? It's all the same bucket. But it's not. So it was really valuable for me to see like how much time I was spending on trade shows versus digital advertising, and then weighing that against the results I was seeing from each channel. So like I could roughly say like, okay, this is the amount of pipeline we generated from trade shows over the past 2 years. And this is the amount of pipeline we're generating in Google Ads. And then weighing that against where my time was going. You kind of can calculate ROI on two different levels. I also think the other important piece of it is having clear expectations with leadership and having a marketing strategy that is agreed upon and ties back to business results. So when marketing is kind of like, I don't want to say an order taker, but like a wearer of multiple hats, and you kind of get a lot of different requests and asks, one thing that gives you a lot of agency to focus your time where it matters is to have an agreed upon strategy. And then when you get a request for, say, like a PDF printout leave behind, well, does that tie back to our overarching business marketing strategy that we agreed on? And if it's a yes, then make it a priority. If it's a no, put it in the parking lot.
Yeah, I think that's great. The second question I had there, though, was resources as it terms to getting resources for marketing, meaning dollars to spend on new initiatives. Say you have a CEO who doesn't necessarily understand or doesn't support, the looking into digital marketing. What would you say if you knew in your heart you had to go there? How do you convince them?
Yeah, I think starting small where you can. Like for example, we keep talking about like different old school channels. If you can start measuring the effectiveness of those and show like, hey, we can't really connect any pipeline, or we can't connect a lot of pipeline to some of these other channels, would it be okay if I took some of the budget that we had allocated for, say there's like one show you go to every year, it's a small tabletop show, you spend like $10,000 to go to it, or something around that. $10,000 is like pretty small for like a full year of digital marketing budget, but that could give you enough runway to pilot something, right? Like in Facebook, you can run campaigns for like $3 a day, like a simple retargeting campaign for $3 a day, just to validate if your audience is on Facebook and interacting with those ads. Sometimes that can be enough to get a start, to show that our audience is active here. This is resonating. I think it's worth putting a little bit more budget behind it. Is kind of how I would try and start that.
Start small. I like it. What do you think, Eddie?
I mean, if we're talking about a series called the industrial marketing is broken, the most broken thing about industrial marketing is the KPI system. Because what we think has worked, and we're just tracking the same stuff for years and years and years, and it's not working. It's not properly tracked. It's not, things are not properly attributed. So when we talk about that attribution or marking the original source where these individuals come from, it's crucial. And Aren brought an amazing and evenly crucial concept, and that's pipeline created. If I had $1 for every time I had an industrial brand who their main KPI was just leads produced, which I'm sure a lot of you have that as one of your main KPIs. That's cute and all, but what's actually creating pipeline? And so I'm here to shake all of you in your mindset saying, why are we looking so much at leads and not what creates actual pipeline for our opportunity? And in God we trust, everybody else brings data. If everything you have is properly attributed, you can reverse engineer and look at what's actually creating pipeline and make more data driven decisions. Aren, it's not that difficult, is it? I mean, I kid you. I know it's difficult, but like the concept is that simple, is it not?
Yeah, the concept's really simple. And I know you just had a whole session about CRMs, but like there's a lot of tools and also processes that are really crucial to like get that level of attribution and analysis. And sometimes it's manual. Like you got to go back, and I've had spreadsheets where I'm looking in Google Ads and I'm like, okay, we got a conversion on this day. These are all the leads that came in on this day. Which one most likely came from Google Ads? And sometimes it's worth it to spend like a couple hours in a spreadsheet to try and get a picture of that pipeline generation. But if you have the right tech stack in place, it gets a lot easier.
Totally. I'm loving this, guys. I'm loving it. All right, Eddie, where are you taking us next?
And so we talk a lot about the way we've always done it, right? And it's something that every marketer in this stinking call has either heard or, let's be honest, probably said ourselves maybe in one. Not everybody though, right? But that being said, what role, Aren, do you think that like nostalgia and familiarity, because this is what we know, this is what we've always done, how big of a role does that play in the effectiveness of some of these older tactics that are being, produced and carried out today?
Yeah, like you said, I think the way we've always done it is always an argument for continuing to do something. But I think when the nostalgia or the familiarity of certain tactics, how that can make them more effective, I think that's only the case when like that tactic is deeply tied to your brand, like it's part of a branding play, or if it's something your customers genuinely expect from you and like would be upset if you stop doing it. And I think it's really hard to be honest about when those are the case, because if you're asking yourself or you're asking your leaders, it's like, of course, our customers would like be so upset if we stopped printing physical brochures and dropping them off at their offices or mailing them. Like people love those brochures. Of course, you're going to say that, but like talk to your customers. Like, is it something they look forward to? Like, I know sometimes there are a lot of like old school, like giveaways or like personalized gifts or like corporate events that feel like maybe they're more old school, but like maybe that golf tournament that you sponsor every year actually brings in a lot of revenue and your customers really look forward to that like FaceTime with you. Like that's kind of like the brutal honesty you need to have when you're thinking about nostalgia and familiarity, because it can really cloud a lot when you're making decisions about what to cut and what to keep.
And I think that the same advice you gave before, you should apply to those nostalgic sacred cows. Is measure it the same way you're looking at your digital efforts with the KPIs that you have there. Try to assess ROI, put some numbers to it, and then really stack it up and see whether it does what it's supposed to do under the same level of scrutiny. But yeah, I mean, you think about things like sending gifts out. I mean, if you're listening out there and you know who you are, don't stop sending me the cookie baskets. Those are fine. Those are fine. But everything else, you should look at these things. I think it's a good point, but it's very common, especially as you see a little bit of a turnover with people that have maybe been in a marketing role for a long time. And now there's a younger generation coming in. They're going to look at the spend on some of these traditional things and ask why. Whereas that person who's been in the role probably knows the value a little bit more, or they have experienced it maybe in years past.
Totally. And I will admit live here in this event that I used to be a that's what I know guy. I stayed in my lane as a marketer because I knew certain things. And even myself as a millennial, like I was even stuck in that type of paralysis. But it was when I began to challenge myself, because we have to realize, industrial marketers, things are changing. And it's not only the way that buyers are getting their information, but how they're finding it, how they're processing it, and also how brands are distributing it. It's changing every single day. Don't even get me started on AI. So if we as ourselves do not adapt, how do we expect ourselves to close that delta between us and every other industry that's marketing on all cylinders? We have to challenge ourselves. We have to experiment. And so I'm saying it right now, those brands who experiment and those who test and properly attribute items, those are going to be your winners moving forward in the future. But let me take a step off my soapbox there for a minute. Am I talking crazy, guys?
You're not. I don't think you are. So this is what we got to hear, Eddie. You need that open and honest thing. Plus, you said you can't get fired from
Yeah,
owning your own
yeah.
business, so you can just say what you want, right?
Yeah, my boss isn't here. She's actually in the other room taking care of the kids.
There you go. There you go. All right.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
What's up next?
Yeah, so kind of bringing us back in. We know, and let's be honest, we know that people are leveraging these older school tactics every single day. So, Aren, with you leveraging almost probably every single marketing tactic that is known to the industry, how do we adapt some of those older school tactics to resonate with the modern audiences that are seriously just, let's say, bombarded by digital content every single day?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think a lot of something that's really popular among marketers right now is this like return to basics, return to fundamentals. It's easy to like overcomplicate things for yourself. So like at the end of the day, effective marketing is really four things. It is having the right message. It is targeting the right audience. It is distributing that message in the right channel where your customers are actually spending time at the right frequency and at scale. And then it's measuring results from those efforts and then iterating based on what you're learning. And it's just kind of this cycle that goes around and around. And so those four things, like, were still as applicable as ever. When you think about like the drop by visits, the sales folks needed the right message to get in the door. Otherwise, why should I even hand you over to our sales manager? They needed the right audience. They're not going to visit facilities that wouldn't potentially result in business. They would be going after their top prospects. And the channel, at least pre-COVID, pretty good chance you're going to find people spending time at their place of work. Like that's where they were there. And then measuring results. I mean, a face-to-face interaction is immediate. It's either a flat out no or a follow-up conversation. So it kind of followed those four components. And those are the four components that I go back to when you think of modernizing something. So if you're maybe going to translate some effort away from like those in-person drop-bys and trying to maybe push that into a digital channel, like the way it might look different is like that message might be the same. Like if it was effective, the messaging going after that customer base could still be effective in a digital channel. If you're not sure if your messaging is on the nose, highly recommend Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. Great framework for positioning and messaging if you're looking to revamp that. But like the message could be the same if it's effective. The targeting is probably going to be the same. Like the customers that, unless there's a big shift in your business, like you might be going after the same prospects that you were knocking on their door. But what's really changing is the channel for distribution. So like say it's Facebook ads instead of door-to-door visits now. You are reaching the same people on these channels, just on a much larger scale and more frequently and in a different way. So like on a channel like LinkedIn, I'd recommend an audience of like 50,000 people. Facebook, maybe go a little bit bigger, 100,000. You're not going to be able to do 100,000 door-to-door visits. But you can reach those people, 10, 15 times a month with an ad on Facebook. So as long as that is a channel where people are spending time, that piece of the strategy is just changing the channel, not the strategy. And then the results look different too. Obviously, you have analytics, you have CRM, pipeline attribution. You have to track conversions, and there's pixels and so much digital marketing ease that goes into that. But the data at your fingertips is a little bit different. But it's still those 4 steps that you are modernizing, I think, when you're making the transition.
Absolutely. So you said just I like to hear other people's recommendations. You said the book is obviously awesome. Is it a book or? Yeah. Okay.
It's a book, and she also has a podcast too. That's really good. But April Dunford talks a lot about like positioning, messaging, even like sales pitch strategy. That's her most recent book. But it's the most like straightforward, non-fluffy framework that I've really liked in the past.
Nice. Well, I'll have to check it out. You know, I like that you take something that is basic. And it's much more complicated to like do as the campaigns get harder and harder, but it's a framework that you can apply to anything. And it's a way of systematically assessing, you know, what you should or shouldn't do. So I think it's repeatable, which is the best kind of process. Um, just a quick question on new school tactics, and I don't know if this is going to steal something from a future question of Eddie's, but you know, what tactic are you really hot on right now? What new school tactic are you thinking is, you know, underutilized, but you know, maybe is over-indexed in terms of value?
Oh man, I'm sure Eddie and I could both answer that. So maybe I'll volley it back to him after. But not super new, but I think something that in industrial people are still skeptical of is paid social for demand generation. So demand generation strategy is, you know, basically just the idea that you are generating demand. You're not looking necessarily for the direct conversion, but you are building awareness and trust with an audience of the right people over time so that when they do enter a buy cycle, you're one of the first people that they think of and they just kind of go directly into your funnel from there. And paid social, I think, is a great channel to do that because you can get in front of people frequently and at scale for, you know, relatively low cost. Like I said, on Facebook, you can run campaigns for less than $5 a day. Obviously, it's got to be in check with the size of the audience that you're going after. But I think that is a channel that people are scared of because they're like, we're B2B. Like, why would we advertise on Facebook? Well, because your customers are there and they're still the same people when they're scrolling Facebook as they are when they're at work and trying to solve problems.
So, Eddie, I want you to answer the same question, obviously, but asking totally for a friend, not me, of course, because I know the answer to this, but define the difference between lead gen and I know Aren just kind of did it, but lead gen, demand gen, what's the difference?
I'm glad you asked me because my upcoming speaking engagements, I'm shining way more light on demand gen within the industrial sector because we have to get up to speed on it, gang. So to me, demand generation, so lead gen is generating leads. We won't go into tactics and strategies. That's pretty simple. But people get caught up in like, what is demand gen? So to me, it's broken down into two categories, and I'll keep this nice and direct. You have your demand creation and your demand capture. Your demand creation focuses on the 95% or so of buyers that are looking, doing research, not ready to buy right now, but as Aren said, you're creating that demand. While that demand capture is efforts focused specifically on the 5% or so of individuals who are ready to buy right now. So you're creating content throughout the entire buyer's journey and the entire funnel, but demand generation is broken down to the capture and the creation of that specifically. Did that help? And if I missed anything, let me know, or Aren, if you have something to add. But that is my analytical understanding of it specifically.
No, it makes perfect sense. So, Aren loves paid social. What does Eddie love?
I wish we could have had an adorable moment, like let's say at the same time, because we would have both said paid social. Because in all reality, I'm trying a variety. I think of all the digital ads you can do across all my clients, and I love LinkedIn ads right now because I do understand there's hesitation of like, what do we talk about? Like meta ads, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. The greatest argument is Aren already said it. They're still the same human beings on their 5 to 9, if you will. So, but LinkedIn is so targeted. You can do so many cool things. There's just great data. You can still drive the same amount of traffic. You can do A/B testing. And as you all know, I love data. So that's what I'm pretty hot on right now. And I understand that individuals say, oh, well, it could be more cost per conversion, whatever it may be, which is true in some circumstances. But man, do I feel it is worth it from an objective data standpoint?
Yeah, so follow-up question there, and it is cute that you guys both said the same thing. Uh, Follow-up question there. I get that you gotta create the journey for them from the ad to something else, but I think that a lot of marketers out there are probably asking what should I put in the ad? What makes a good ad? It's not just understanding how to do it, but what makes a good ad? Why don't you go, Eddie, first, and then pass it on over to Aren?
Absolutely. I'll keep it nice and simple. So I try to bring it all to my E's, right? For lack of a better, my 3 E's. I want to educate, I want to entertain, and then I want to engage. That's what I'm trying to do. So if I'm hitting these specific buckets, whether it's product, whether it's thought leadership, whatever type of content it is, I'm reverse engineering everything to do one of those 3 items because that is content. That type of stuff actually converts and drives action. So without getting on a soapbox here, those are my biggies. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I think of paid social and different types of ads differently, right? Like you're not just running product ads that are like, look at this shiny machine or this shiny component that I make and is going to solve all your problems. Like, yes, product ads that are specifically talking about what you offer have a time and a place for somebody that is further down in that funnel. But you also want, like Eddie said, more educational content too. So I think case studies, if you have them, are some of the best paid social content, especially if you have like a short clip of your customer coming on and giving a testimonial, running that as a video ad, golden. I think that makes a really good ad is social proof. And also I think go back to the conversion copywriting basics. There's a member of my team, Alan Fenwald, if you find him on LinkedIn, writes a lot about it. And just having a good hook, having something that is interesting, like it's agitating a problem that they have, is really the maker of a good ad, in my opinion.
Nice, nice. So you heard it here, guys. Some real tangible tips, not just how we're evolving, but some things you can get started on it. And I think one of the takeaways, as I was thinking about what we're going to do today in this conversation, is I believe that most of the companies that are listening in and tuning in, and the companies in industrial, have a lot of the skills and necessary to execute these. And they might even have some of the assets already done. It's just about looking at them in a different way. One thing I wanted to circle back to is trade shows. Again, Mary Keogh is going to walk us through trade shows in depth in a couple weeks. I don't want to take away from that one, but let's talk about trade shows from the perspective of marketing. Aaron, what makes a trade show a win? What makes it not a win from your perspective?
Yeah, I think trade shows can be so effective, but they're also such a huge cost expense on your budget. And so the way I think about them is like, I have to milk this for everything I can. And so that is pre-show. So some tips, like if you have customers that are coming to the show, set up dinners with your sales team, set up booth visits for them to do demos in the booth, pre-plan some interactions. Don't just wait for the show and hope they come by. You're probably already doing that, but like that's pre-show, getting a lot of hype with like email, social media, talking about what's actually going to be in the booth, not just like, hey, we'll be there, come say hi. Say, we're going to be doing this demo. And it's important because it is solving this poultry automated packaging problem, like something specific that is educational. I also think the content of your booth should have like a message and a theme. It should have those enticing demos in it. Also inviting, I'm just kind of like rambling, pulling from the store of my trade show knowledge. But those industry publications are also going to be at the show. So setting up interviews with your SMEs, they're probably, writing educational articles, writing things about the show, like what's new. So trying to get some PR leverage out of the show. And then content creation. So you have all of your, like, you probably have service technicians, salespeople, product managers, your customers are there. And so if you can film testimonials, demos, booth walkthroughs, even just getting like B-roll or good pictures, like if you can leave with a wealth of content, like it's going to be so worth it. And I know as a marketer, you feel like you're running around with your head cut off at that show, but like it might even be worth it to have like an extra person come and just be focused on making sure like you get those pictures so that after the show, you can leverage that into like video ads. It can be assets for your sales team to send in like follow-up emails like, oh, here's a video of our machine running at, Pack Expo or our recent show. And I know you were interested in that. Like, here it is. There's just so much you can make from it. So just kind of be thinking of the opportunities. Like, gosh, what more can I do with this? Because I guarantee there's probably a lot.
Yeah. So Eddie, you do some content to trade shows. What does it take? Does it take anything more than just the cell phone in order to make content these days?
You can make it as fancy as you want, but I think that TikTok has really shown us that authenticity is fantastic, and so you really don't need to put a ton of effort. And I couldn't ring the bell louder of content, content, content. The days of just going to a trade show, putting down your black tarp, having somebody sit there on their laptop and scroll their phone, and you got a show banner behind you and you're 10 by 10. The days of that being effective are over, industrial marketers, and we need to grow up, and we're better than that. We know, and that's the worst part is some of us because we're not properly tracking. We know it's not nearly as effective. So let's break the mold. Let's use data to make better decisions. Let's create content pre, during, and post show from your phone. If you have a camera, even better. But we can do things so simply if we just put a little bit of effort into it, gang.
Nice, nice. All right, Eddie, we've got 10 minutes left. Are you gonna take us home? Maybe we'll leave a little time for people to ask questions if they have them.
There you go. Let's drive this bad boy home. So, Aaron, what lessons can today's marketers learn from the history of some of these older school tactics and the evolution that we're seeing? Like, what are we supposed to pull from this?
Yeah. So I think I want to come back to two things that we've touched on. So one of them was like the fundamentals are always going to be relevant in marketing. So thinking about the message you need to get to your audience, targeting the right audience, picking the right channels for distributing it. When we think of things like modernizing, old school, new school, it's really those tactics and channels that I think are changing the most. And then how you're measuring that. The other thing is we were talking about the difference between a tactic and a strategy. And I think like if I had to say anything bad about digital marketing, it's that the data that it readily provides us can misguide us if we're not careful, right? And I think that's something we can kind of learn from how we used to think about success in some of the more old school tactics. Because what I see happen all the time is it's like, we need to modernize. We want to try running Facebook ads. We run Facebook ads for a month and get no leads. And then we decide, oh, Facebook doesn't work for us. We're never going to do it again. And I just, it makes me want to cry when I hear that, because the reason that happened is because Facebook wasn't part of a larger strategy. It was kind of like a one-off activity. And there's so many questions we're not asking ourselves in that scenario. Like, did we target the right audience? Did we talk to our customers? Is Facebook even a channel where they're active? Did we even have our conversion tracking set up properly? Like maybe we didn't even install the Facebook pixel and it was just a technical mistake. But like, I think without the instant gratification of analytics data, some of those old school tactics, we gave them a little bit of a longer runway to show results, right? Because you go to a show, you don't expect the next day, $10 million in pipeline. But like sometimes you turn on a Facebook ad and your boss is like, the next day, 24 hours, where are the leads? It's like, it's been 24 hours, like you still have to give these new school tactics runway and kind of look beyond like impressions and click-through rate and all this data we have at our disposal.
Yeah, so I was talking with one of our other summer sessions experts, Chris, who's going to be coming on to talk about content marketing. And he said something that really resonated with me. He's like, I do content marketing for the sales I'm going to get in a year. It makes selling in a year from now so easy, or much easier. It's not for me to make selling easier today, and that's an expectation thing. So yes, there's all these different tools and things that are available to give you the leads and reports that are live and update immediately. But setting expectations is really important. The other point that I kind of want to drive home here that really I think is the most important thing that we need to be thinking of is the technology and all of the extra tools and even the new tactics are not what is driving this evolution in marketing. What's driving this evolution is our customers. Our customers are where they are, and they're digesting content, they're digesting input the way that they are. And we're just catching up with the tools and the technology. The tools and the technology are a reaction to that. And so if you're thinking to yourself, well, my customers are different. Your customers might be different today, but ultimately, end users are evolving, and they're evolving fast, and they're buying differently. We saw a McKinsey report the other day that's I think it was last year or something like that gave some unbelievable statistics in terms of the level of spend that procurement people are willing to do without ever talking to a salesperson. We're talking $500 million in some cases without ever talking to a salesperson. And so if that's the case, being present in some of these other tactics and tools are really important. If you're relying only on a salesperson talking to somebody, you might miss that big person who just needs a lot of information in the channels where they live. So if you listen to what Aren's talking about here, so much of it is about understanding your customer. That was weaved throughout the whole presentation today. So that was just my kind of takeaway from everything you said here, Aren. Really great stuff. So Eddie, what are your thoughts here to round us out?
We have to be distributing messaging out there. I mean, even at the Industrial Marketing Summit, it was revealed that True Marketing did a research where they interviewed over like 800 technical buyers across the manufacturing industry. And depending on your age, they were spending anywhere from 65% to upwards of 80% of their buying process without talking to a single human outside of the organization about it. That's a massive amount of time that you brands don't get in front of them. At least you don't think about it that way. So we're shifting our mindsets today, gang. There's the 5% that's ready now, but we also need to be talking to the 95 that will be ready at some point. Chris's point you brought up earlier was great. Distribution, gang. It's the key of the castle.
Nice. So I'll let anyone throw in some questions. It looks like Destiny put the link to the book that she mentioned. I'm definitely going to check that out myself. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to throw in? Please just throw them into the chat. And while they're flowing in, if they are, come back and check out our other summer sessions that are coming up. It's going to continue along the same line, but just looking at some different areas. But yeah, I mean, great conversation today, guys. Really, this is exactly what we were thinking about, Eddie, when we designed, just the thesis for this program is how can we poke the bear just enough so that they can think about these things. So yeah. How about Aren, you just shared something here, just so that we know what we're looking at here. What is this?
Yeah, Eddie had mentioned a report that True Marketing, they did it in collaboration with Global Spec, and they shared and presented that at the Industrial Marketing Summit earlier this year. I was just sharing that report in the chat.
Awesome. So guys, download it now if you want a copy of that. But Aren, I just want to thank you very much for being here today. This is I appreciate it. I enjoyed getting to know you through this process, and I'm sure we'll stay connected. For those of you out here, please follow Aren and Eddie and make sure that you're connected to their content. But this was a good one, guys. If anyone has any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me, and I can connect you through to these sharp marketers. Any last words, Eddie?
I appreciate you all. Check out that report. I look at all types of information, all types of data all the time, as you can tell. That report was one of the most eye-opening pieces of information that I've seen in the last 15 years. And if you want to talk about new school tactics and how your ideal audience responds and how they want information, that report right there is a gold mine. Aren, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it was really great. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. We will be sending a recording of this to all of you. Does take maybe an hour or so for us to reformat it and send it back out. But feel free to share it, show it internally to the rest of your teams. Again, you can use some of this in order to influence others. Don't just be the only spokesperson for marketing in your company. Know that there's a whole group of people behind you that are trying to champion a new way of thinking about marketing. So thank you so much. Tune back in, check back in for our future summer sessions, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.